So the first step to solving this inequality, absolute value inequality, is to isolate the absolute value. So I first have to get rid of this right here. And the way I'm going to get rid of that is by subtracting. I'm actually going to subtract it from both sides. Now you could technically multiply through by 7, but I would be careful and leave it sitting on the outside if you did that. But let's just go ahead and not do that. Let's just subtract 4/7 from both sides. Now some people might look at this and say, "Oh, this doesn't have a solution because there's a negative in the absolute value," but there's actually not a negative. The x is going to be limited what it's allowed to be, but this negative here doesn't impact the ability to finish this problem. We can still finish the problem. So let's turn this into, let's go ahead and clear the fraction. That's always a good idea. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation by the least common denominator, which is 7. And when I do that, I get 7 times 16.
And then plus 20.
I'll write it like that. Minus 4, because that 7 is going to cancel with that. Imagine multiplying by 7 here, here, and on the outside. And in fact, I'm just going to leave it on the outside like this.
Yeah, times I, get out of it.
I'm going to just leave it there on the outside. You can actually distribute it in. There's nothing wrong with distributing in there, and it'll take care of the 7 on the inside as well. In fact, let's do that. Let's distribute the 7 in. So this becomes the absolute value of negative 14x plus 8. And on this side, what was 7 times 16? Punch that in here. Let's see. That'd be 70 plus 42, which is 112. So 112 minus 4 is 108. So there I've taken care of that. Looks a lot nicer now. Now this is the trick where you've isolated the absolute value, and now you're going to write this in two different ways. Now notice that the absolute value is greater than or equal to, or it's greater than not equal to, it's greater than a value. When you've got a greater than, think back. I like to think about, if I told you that the absolute value of x is greater than 3, what does that mean? It means that anything 3 or bigger satisfies this, and anything negative 3 or smaller satisfies this inequality. Because if I plug in negative 4, what's the absolute value of negative 4? 4. Positive 4, and 4 is greater than 3. That's a true expression. So that's what my graph would look like here, and so this is what I have. I'm going to have to write an OR. I'm sorry, this is a and inequality. Is it an and or an or? No, it's an or. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's an or inequality. Of course it's an or inequality because it's arrows going, it's either this way or this way. So it's an or inequality. So let's take this and simplify it. I'll do that above it. Alright, so let's do this problem. Let's take this and we're going to write this two different ways. We're going to write it as negative 14x plus 8 is greater than 108. That's the same thing. I just took off the symbols. Notice that I turned the equation around because I like to write my x's on the left. Or negative 14x minus 8. Now I'm going to flip the sign and make that negative. Is less than negative 8. Whoops, that was a plus there. There's my two inequalities.
That's negative 108.
Thank you, negative 108. And I'm making all kinds of silly transcription mistakes there. Alright, so now these are the two inequalities that I'm solving, and we can do each one. Notice I'm going to have to divide by a negative 14, so these signs are going to flip again when I divide us ultimately. So first let's subtract 8, so it's 100, and now let's divide by negative 14. We can just leave that as a fraction, but when I do that I have to flip the sign. So x is less than negative 100 over 14, and same with this. I can subtract, that's going to become negative 116. And now when I divide that, I'm going to flip this sign also. So now this sign is going to turn into that sign. And I'm going to divide it. It's going to be 116 divided by 14, which is simplifying both of these before you punch it in. You're going to want to simplify these. Just write them as reduced fractions. So here's my answer. X is less than half of 100 is 50.
So I always try to
X is less than negative 50 over 7, or X is greater than, divide these by 2 again, that's going to be 58 over 7. And there's my picture. Notice it's a picture like this. Now this happens to be negative 50 over 7, and this happens to be 58 over 7, but it's that same picture that we talked about before. There's your answer.